Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Just Saying Football with Jack and Sean. I'm your host, Sean Gannon, alongside my partner, Jack Nicholas. We're here to bring you news, notes, weekly updates, and game analysis of your favorite teams from around the league. Now, the chance, go check out our website, justsayingfootball.com. Follow us on Instagram at Just Saying, no GWJS for article and video updates. And don't forget to get us in your ears on Spotify at Just Saying Football. Buddy, week 3 continues.
Week 4
Not
now.
so, oh God, week 4. Oh my goodness.
Came
You're
up quick.
absolutely right. It came up way too quick. I'm not even prepared for it, obviously. And we're going to jump this one in with just the worst game of the weekend by far. I don't even think the fans care about this one. We have the Denver Broncos making their way to Chicago to take on the Bears. Denver is currently favored in this one by -3.5, which is confusing. Over under here 46, which also makes no sense. I have nothing to say to this game. It was ridiculous what happened with the Broncos last week, given everything that Sean Payton said during the offseason and all my expectations of that team this season. I think that they should win this game because their team is better on paper than what we've seen from the Bears. But it wouldn't surprise me if they take an L. So
Yeah, this was this is a tough one going over obviously the stat sheet. We'll go over most of that when we cover the Miami game. Don't want to take too much light away from that. For the Broncos, I said last week, what's in the water out there? Obviously something terrible. But I also think in Chicago, we're seeing kind of similar things where you just can't figure out the offense or defense is kind of bleeding points. And maybe that has to do with the 46, but I expected something where around the high 30s for this. These teams have been underwhelming this year. I'll take the Bears or the home team. I feel like they're just going to have to try to do what Miami did a little bit last week. Just try to run as much as you can on this Denver defense, tire them out. But I like the Bears as the underdog. I don't like saying that, though.
all right, I like it. Let's move this into our blowout section. We have the Arizona Cardinals making their way to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. San Francisco's favored in this one by -14, over under here of 44. Arizona coming off a huge and impressive win against the Cowboys last week. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts about this game?
Yeah, so when it comes down to, Arizona, you can't really tell if they're tanking or not. But obviously, last week, I got to say, it was very creative. They had Rondale Moore in there. They had a lot of situations with James Conner getting the ball. I think that this week they obviously run into a roadblock, kind of like we talked with the Giants last week. The spread is San Francisco by 14. I do not know about that. This Arizona team has a little bit more fight the last 2 weeks than we expected. So
Agreed.
I'm kind of liking this team. I like the 44 over under. I don't really like the spread of the picks. I know San Francisco is going to win, but how many points are they really going to run up? Until they take their division rival down.
Absolutely. I say don't take the spread on that one. For sure. Lock in 49ers money line. Cardinals, huge win last week. Really proud of them, really impressed.
For sure.
Team store needs to get Josh Dobbs jerseys in there. I don't know if anyone's seen the
Yeah.
video. They don't even have that out there. Arizona Cardinals, I think this is just not going to be their week. 49ers right now will look to be the best team in all of football. They're so well balanced right now. And I think they're trying to keep this undefeated streak going right now. So let's keep this moving. So we have the Kansas City Chiefs making their way to New York to take on the Jets. Kansas City is favored in this one by -9.5. Over under here, 42.5. Rough for Jets fans everywhere right now. They just signed Trevor Siemian, which is weird. Now we're hearing reports that the defense is not behind Robert Saleh with his continued support of Zach Wilson. I'm locking in Kansas City right off the bat. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift last week were unstoppable and continue to do so this week, I think.
Yeah, obviously, Kansas City, they found their groove. They got all their running backs involved last week, and their defense played great. Taylor Swift, obviously, making sure that she was there. But I got to say, the way that the master class was put on by the Chiefs shouldn't be overlooked. They're dangerous at home, and, they're dangerous on the road. And in prime time, watch out, Jets. I don't know. I like Kansas City 9.5. No problem with that.
I like it too. All right, let's keep this moving along. We have the Washington Commanders making their way to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Philadelphia's favored in this one by -8. Over under here, 44.5. Jack and I were talking actually last week about the Eagles game while the game was happening. It was super frustrating to watch them just drain the remaining 9 minutes of clock out in that fourth quarter. It was great football. I mean,
Of course.
beautiful
What did I
football,
say
but
to you? I said, I can't believe they're letting them drain the clock. And Sean goes, well, it's so impressive how they're keeping this 9-minute drive. And I'm like, it is, but dang, like, Needed that
3-yard
garbage
run,
50 yards.
3-yard run, 4-yard run, dump off pass, 3-yard run. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's impressive to see how they are operating. Obviously, a little bit of shades of last year, where you're getting AJ Brown heavily involved last week. Sam Howell, he's getting sacked a lot, man. I mean, there's only
Yes.
been 3 games, and he's been sacked 19 times. Not obviously his fault. Obviously, you could blame some of those picks last week on protection. But it's definitely not going to get easier this week. Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox, and Jordan Davis. That looks like 1,000 pounds of 3 guys, just a wrecking crew. And this offensive line is not going to be prepared this week. I love what I'm seeing from the Eagles so far. So, let's take it. I think the Eagles 8 by 8. Let's go.
I'm going Eagles as well. Hopefully, if Howell plays a little bit cleaner of the game and the offensive line tries to play a little bit better, let's see what happens. I do have a lot of faith, though, in Howell. I think potentially as his franchise quarterback, let's see how the season continues. 4 interception game is tough, but to your point, that protection was there a few times. Maybe a different outcome on some of those passes. And also, when you're getting sacked 19 times in 3 games, you're having no time to throw that ball. So that's rough. Let's keep this moving along. See the Las Vegas Raiders making their way to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. Chargers are favored in this one by -5.5. Over on here, 47.5. Chargers breaking my heart last week. Vikings also breaking my heart last week. But what are your thoughts going into this game? Jimmy G is still in concussion protocol at the time of this recording. Potential that he doesn't play in this one.
Yeah, league high 6 picks for Jimmy G. Not what you wanted to see so far. Obviously, they had an interesting but low scoring game last week in prime time. Los Angeles, this could definitely be a blowout. Like you said, without Mike Williams in there, they are going to be kind of forced to, use Quentin Johnston, who they picked in the first round this year. Josh Palmer, who got a touchdown last week. Austin Eckler is going to probably come back this week after missing the last couple of weeks. I think that, what Keenan Allen did last week, he had a touchdown pass, 20 targets, 18 catches, 215 yards. I think this is obviously something that can't be overlooked. Keenan Allen's fully healthy this year,
Yeah.
and Vegas really doesn't have anybody who can stop him. So I think the Chargers take this one at home, no problem.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think, though, for fantasy purposes, you can still start Devontae Adams. Don't be afraid of that. Doesn't matter who plays quarterback. It'd be Brian Hoyer in this case is the backup. Devontae Adams will always produce, and Brian Hoyer is only going to be looking his way for this game. So if you have him, start him, feel free. And the Chargers are also bleeding a ton of passing yards as well defensively. So just to keep that in mind, but I'm locking the Chargers for the win for sure. Let's keep this moving along because we're now getting into our meh category and our first international game of the season when the Atlanta Falcons make their way to Jacksonville. It's 9:30 in the morning. It's in London. Jags are favored in this one by -3. Over under here of 44. Atlanta did not find the the end zone last week, buddy. What are your thoughts going into this game? Jaguars also took a surprisingly huge loss to the Texans.
Yeah, so we were saying, Trevor Lawrence, he didn't have a great record against the Texans, but obviously there was some crazy stuff that happened. Fullback, kick return.
We love it.
You can't get anything better than that, obviously. But Trevor didn't look great, and the Houston Texans really were the reason, for that. But the Falcons, this early morning, Jacksonville plays so well early in London, and I think that Atlanta, they need to show us that they're going to be able to compete in their division, and beating a team from the AFC who was a playoff team last year will show me that. It is neutral ground, but I do like Atlanta to kind of upset. Jacksonville kind of left me with a bad taste in my mouth last week.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think this is their opportunity to get that bad taste out of our mouths. I'm going with Jacksonville for sure. The thing for me is just they won a handful of times already in London. It's what they do
Yeah,
going back to like the Blake Bortles era. So for me, I'm going Jacksonville. I think this is a huge bounce back game for
yeah.
them. Kyle Pitts, does he get in the end zone? Yes or no?
I'm saying this week it's a risky play every week, but Kyle Pitts, genuinely, I think he can get a touchdown this week. If you don't know yet, he only has 3 touchdowns since he was selected for the overall. His first one in London, and I think he's got to do that if we want to get him on the right track. Very metaphorical. I like him, but I don't like what Desmond Ritter's doing, Sean. I am a little worried about him against
Me too.
Jacksonville. I am gonna need this 1-2 combo of Atlanta, in the backfield. Last week they couldn't really get it going the way they have the first 2 weeks and made everything more of a threat from their backfield to help Ritter out. He's really gonna have to get over this because Jacksonville has some amazing defensive players. Um, no matter what, I like Jacksonville in this one, but I think on neutral ground, Atlanta gets a weird win this week.
All right, I like that. Let's keep us
Interestingly.
moving along. So we have the Minnesota Vikings making their way to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Minnesota's favored in this one -3.5. Over under here of 45.5. Revenge game for Adam Thielen against his former team. What are your thoughts about this one? Minnesota Vikings took a brutal loss last week. It was heartbreaking. I don't think Kenneth
Yeah.
Murray caught that interception, but that's just me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a crazy thing. Sean loves Kenneth Murray, and I texted him. I was like, "Wow, your own, favorite guy on the Chargers defense kind of did that to you." But it sucks. The Vikings got to come back with a vengeance this week, the same way Adam Thielen's kind of looking at this game. But this is one of those games, just kind of like the Denver and Chicago game. One of these teams has to win. I've been saying Minnesota the last couple weeks, and I'm starting to feel like I am getting too repetitive, but their backs have been against the wall. They're a playoff team right now that's 0-3, and it's not going to get any better if you can't go into Carolina and take them out. Obviously, huge Justin Jefferson game last week. Kind of love him for a touchdown this week as well. Daniil Hunter, though, I mean, 5 sacks through 3 games. Andy Dalton, he looked good last week against Seattle, but I do think the front seven of Minnesota is a little bit better than Seattle's front seven right now on defense.
Yeah, let's see if they can get it done. Even if Bryce Young's in this one, that's an opportunity to rattle the young rookie quarterback. Adam Thielen, I think, has a pretty decent game. Our secondary is not playing super well, but I'm also locking in the Minnesota Vikings in this one. I think we have to get the win. We're like one of those weird fringe 0-3 teams that if things fall in our way and the Lions and Packers just lose a game here and there, and we can win in our division, we're an ugly potential playoff team in the North, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's not pretty. But you gotta hold the faith as a fan. Moving us right along, we have an AFC North showdown when the Baltimore Ravens make their way to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Cleveland is favored in this one by -2.5. Over under here of 41. What are your thoughts going into this one? The Ravens were stunned last week at home with Gardner Minshew and the Colts getting the win over them.
Yeah, I was with one of my friends this weekend. He was sitting there waiting for the Baltimore 3.5. That game was so back and forth. But obviously they couldn't get the win. We're kind of expecting somebody in this AFC North race to emerge as our favorite. Right now, Baltimore is kind of being that team for me right now. I think they're underdogs in this game because they're on the road against a divisional opponent. But I got to say, Lamar right now almost 200 yards rushing through the first 3 games, and he's got almost 600-yard passing. I think that right now he needs to really be able to take over these games, as we kind of saw him do to the Texans in week 1. The Browns are playing well. They were able to kind of utilize all the running backs last week after Nick Chubb was gone, but I do like their defense a little bit better than I like the Ravens defense. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, that's why I'm going Cleveland in this one. I think that
Okay.
defense has just done a really good job of shutting down the pass. I think they've only allowed like 131 yards a game passing, which is
Yeah.
insane. Obviously, we're only 3 weeks in. That's going to change drastically over time. But at the start, it's really impressive. They have a great pass rush. They have a solid defensive front, and they could really change the course of the game. To your point about the multiple running backs, it was great. I think they had a ton of different running backs, 6 different rushers in this game. Pierre Strong led it with 26 yards, though. So, it's not the same as it was with Chubb just absolutely taking over, going for 20 carries and 100 yards. So they're going to have to continue this running back by committee, which
Yeah.
worries me for the long-term success because it's not Nick Chubb back there anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but if Deshaun Watson can replicate the game that he had last week, he was 27 of 33, 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. This formula of solid defensive play with just smart offensive play that doesn't turn the ball over, they can win games and they could easily win the AFC North with this. So I think that's the method right now for the Browns. I think that's what Kevin Stefanski is going to be dialing up week in and week out. And I think they take the win over Baltimore, especially at home.
I like that. I like that. We've seen rookie Zay Flowers. He has 21 catches and almost 200 yards through the first game. I weirdly like him to get his first touchdown this week,
Right?
despite the fact that he has to go up against Denzel Ward. Obviously, I feel like Mark Andrews and him, I haven't heard their names enough. I would love to see a game right now where they can really like both take charge of the offense and help Lamar out, because Lamar, despite the 200 rushing yards he has, he is only averaging about 200 yards flat in the first two games. He only has two touchdowns passing, so I would like to see that as well. But I got the Ravens in this game. Justice Hill is coming back. It's gonna. I feel like it's just all kind of aligning for them right now.
Yeah, I think also I just want to put this out there before we just move into our next game. Jonathan Taylor still wants out of Indianapolis, and the
Yes.
Ravens, while their cap space is tight, they don't have a true running back one right now, and they keep getting these small little running back injuries here and there.
True.
Just it's out there. All right, moving this right along. Pittsburgh Steelers are making their way to Houston to take on the Texans. Pittsburgh favored in this one by -3. Over under here of 42. Steelers got the huge win against the Raiders, but as always, it came down to their defense. What are your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, 42. That's got to be one of the lower ones of the week right here. Essentially, we've been seeing the Texans. Sean was kind of right about CJ Stroud. He's ready. He looks poised. He has 4 touchdowns in the first two
Goes
weeks.
through its
I know you're
reads.
going to talk to you about your guy, but he's got to deal with one of the biggest threats in the NFL in TJ Watt, who has 6 sacks. Obviously, and that scoop and score from week 1 already through 3 weeks. He's going to be playing against his brother's former team. How do you feel about the Texans at home, about Stroud through the first couple of games? Because I'm taking the spread on this. I think that, Houston +3, if you're going to do it, this could be the week to do it, because Pittsburgh's offense, it does not look like it really can move too far for me. So
No, Pittsburgh's offense is not fun to watch whatsoever. I think part of that's Matt Canada's fault. I think also some of that is Kenny Pickett. Year 2, still understanding it, offense in the game, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, I love what CJ Stroud has done through the first 3 weeks. No interceptions. He's throwing for a ton of yards right now, over 900 yards. 64.5% of his passes are getting completed. And what it is he's just playing smart football. He's going through his reads. He's not necessarily taking the big shots yet, which is totally fine right now, because this franchise isn't going to flip overnight. It's not going to become a playoff
yep,
team just because he's in the building. It's going to take time to build a rapport with some of these wide receivers, as we're seeing now with Tank Dell. As we get into weeks
yeah,
2 and 3, he's absolutely dominating on the field. The running game is still something that they're struggling with. I think this is the first week that he throws an interception. This is a really tough
oh, he's gonna
defense.
jinx him early. Oh
This is
no,
a tough defense in the
jinxing
Steelers,
CJ
man.
Stroud early.
This is a
Sorry,
tough defense in the
CJ.
Steelers. This is a really tough defense in the Steelers. And I'm going
No,
with
man.
Pittsburgh in this one. I think that this defense, TJ Watt can easily get a scoop and score touchdown with a
Yeah,
strip sack. So that kind of thing doesn't surprise me with them whatsoever. We saw last week against the Raiders, their defense, the formula of this team the last few years, even when Roethlisberger was still around during his slow descent,
yeah,
it's defense is going to win this game. Defense is going to win this game. If the offense can just basically get first downs and punt the ball into their territory,
yeah.
they will win the game for them. That's all they needed to do.
I mean, both of these teams right now are bottom 5 in rushing. I like to say the same, where I'm like, oh, Pittsburgh's gonna win with their rushing and their defense. But I don't know if Najee's gonna help himself playing against D'Amico Ryan's defense. It's
We'll see.
this
Bounce
may
back
be.
Najee is going to happen in time.
You look at this game on paper and you say, 42, yeah, that's about where that's gonna end up.
All right. Yeah, I know that's true. I like that. I'll take the under on 42, but let's keep
Yeah,
this
me
moving
too.
along. Right, under on
Yeah,
there. We're gonna
under on
keep this
that.
moving. Absolutely. All right. We have the Los Angeles Rams making their way to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Indianapolis is favored by -1, over under here of 45 and a half. Zach Moss absolutely took over
Oh
last
my
week for
god.
the running back group. I loved it. I started him in fantasy, went off for me. And
He's
I'm going with the Colts this week against the Rams.
I can't, the Colts over the Rams. That's a big upset this week for sure, man. I mean, I'm looking at it like the Rams, despite the loss last week, they are still playing better than I thought that they would play. They went through a big turnover this year. But right now, I got to say, Gardner Minshew's playing great, but Matthew Stafford has to get the offense going to the point where he can throw touchdown passes. Everyone's talking about Puka, everyone's talking about how Kyron Williams has all these great stats. Matthew Stafford only 2 touchdowns in the first 3 weeks, but yet he almost has 1,000 yards. He has 910 yards right now through the passing game, and I'm like, he's got to be able to outthrow Minshew because Minshew and Zach Moss, Michael Pittman, they're all going to get going through this offense. Right now, I like the Rams. The Rams are in a tough spot. I do think that they are the better team on paper. I'm excited to kind of see Quentin Nelson versus Aaron Donald right on between the offensive line and the defensive line. And I'm looking at it like I think that the Rams go into Indy. They just lost on the road. They got it. They got to get this win.
Yeah, I want it to be the Rams. I hope that they can get it going. If
Mhm.
there's a possibility that Anthony Richardson's also in this game, that rush ability I think will even add more to the
Yeah, for
fun.
sure.
I think he's back at practice at the day of this recording. But he's still technically like in the concussion protocol. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Where like they bring
Yeah.
you around, they let you like walk, throw, think, stretch. So we'll see what happens, but I still like him going into this game. All right, moving this right along, an NFC South matchup. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers making their way to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Uh, Derek Carr went down last week with an AC joint injury sprain. Jameis Winston is now going to be the starter. I'm still going with the Saints despite this. We saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get absolutely bottled up with just really, really good defense.
Hmm.
Alvin Kamara's back. Put him in for an anytime touchdown for sure. And I think similar
Yeah.
to what the Eagles did last week, that's going to be the formula here. Just really simple offensive play with Jameis for right now. Have a good rushing attack. You have good running backs. And just keep them off the field with good defensive play, which they can easily do because the Saints have a solid defense.
I like that. Yeah, I think that we saw the Eagles really get to the offensive line of the Buccaneers and make Baker Mayfield a little uncomfortable last week. The Bucks got it going towards the end of the game, but if New Orleans does start hot, no matter who's stepping in there, quarterback, they got Olave, Thomas, Juwan Johnson, now Kamara, and you have the opportunity of Rashid Shaheed with all of his creativity, how he's being used. If you had him in fantasy last week, he had no catches, no yards return, punt return. It's just how they're doing it right now. They're just scoring points any way possible. That's classic Saints ball. I think at home in the dome divisional game, I don't think
Yeah.
they lose that one.
They definitely put up points in the second half too.
Yeah,
For
for
that
sure.
Packers game was annoying. But moving this right
Uh,
along, I know I really thought
I
the
was gonna
Packers
say
were going
before
to
we
win.
move on, I just want to say I said last week that the Saints over the Packers was gonna be like the upset. The line was so close. And I really thought, man, I really thought Jordan Love. And to be fair, I had the
Ridiculous.
Jordan Love 250 and the 2 touchdowns on my bet slip, and he had a rushing touchdown, which was great, but it wasn't 1.5 over passing touchdown. The whole game broke my heart.
It was absolutely insane. I hated it. It hurt me. But we're gonna move this right along to the Cincinnati Bengals making their way to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Cincinnati's favoring this by -2.5. Over under here 41.5. Bengals not playing great football, not playing Cincy football as of
Yeah,
late. Don't love it. I'm going with them because Tennessee, it's even scarier.
yeah.
Didn't score a touchdown last week. Derrick Henry, what was that, 2 yards rushing?
All right. I mean, he did not get a touchdown for the first time in a while last week. It didn't look like that the offense was running, the way that they need to at this point. Last week, I feel like it was game script too because they were behind for so long, and I don't see a way that this Titans offense gets ahead in these games. So I think, like you're saying, since he is just less of the two evils right now, like they're just dealing with the same amount, but there is no reason the Titans can't go out and win this game at home. But if the Bengals don't win this game, they're going to put themselves in a huge position. And Joe Burrow was very comfortable last week throwing to Jamar Chase, couple missed targets to T. Higgins. Didn't really look like he was thrown outside of that. But I mean, Chase is back. But you asked me off camera. I'm gonna bring him back. Is it the regression of Derrick Henry?
I mean, it might be. I said 2 yards, but it was 2 points in fantasy, 20 yards.
20
Um,
yards.
Look, it was 11 carries for 20 yards. It could be the offensive line, which is also not great. But it just this entire Tennessee team. I think that they missed the Super Bowl window.
Mhm.
I think it's
That's a
now
good point.
they're getting in a rebuild. I don't think Will Levis though is going to see the field anytime soon. Truthfully,
Nah.
um, I think that this is like a really weird position to be a Titans fan. But it's well coached by Mike Vrabel. They'll win a game here and there. I just don't see it happening against the Bengals this week.
Yeah, the Bengals, they are a playoff team. We just haven't seen that point of them yet.
Let's see if it can happen. All right, moving this right along, we have the New England Patriots making their way to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Dallas saving this by -7, over under here of 43. Zeke takes on his former team. I'm going with Dallas in this one. The loss last week was surprising. I think that they need to have a bounce back game, or of course, Mike McCarthy will once again be on the magical hot seat that he is always in like the first quarter of the season. And then it's always in the postseason and the off season. So
Yep.
if he wants to avoid that conversation this year, you got to beat the Pats after losing to the Cardinals. There's just no excuse for what happened last week, despite the Trayvon Diggs ACL injury.
Yeah, and I know, the injury definitely, affected them because you could really see that, Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coach, was kind of out coaching Mike McCarthy last week, which is crazy. I do think that it comes down to this. These are two Super Bowl winning coaches. I think that Belichick does have the edge despite being on the road. I think that he keeps this game very low scoring as well. And within the spread of 7 for sure. The 43, I like that because that's a
With the
pretty
over.
low line
Oh,
in general. Yeah, no, I'm saying I'd take the over because
oh,
I think that's a low line, but I'm saying I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game. Like I can see it, being like a 17-10 win genuinely because New England's been able to keep people in check this year. I think Zeke for a touchdown is a weird but fun
you got to get
touchdown
him in the end zone
play.
against his former team.
He's
You gotta.
gotta. But my big touchdown for this game for sure is Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, by the way, just want to put it out there. Number 3 tight end in fantasy right now through 3 weeks. He is available in almost 50% of ESPN leagues right now.
Boom, go and get him off your waiver wire if you haven't already. All right, moving into our last game and our best game because it is the game of the week. It is when the Miami Dolphins made their way to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Buffalo opens favorites in this one, -2.5, -3, depending on where you're looking.
Eh,
Over under here of 53.5. I'll happily hit the over on that one based on the scoring of one team named the Miami Dolphins last week who put up 70 points without Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, they covered the spread by themselves and then some last week.
They
I mean, Mike
freaking did.
McDaniels, and nobody is having more fun and success coaching a team than Mike McDaniels. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know that in the beginning, especially, Sean was kind of focused on the rebuild of Miami, and he always said this team could have the potential down the line. But it's a crazy thing, how they went and they rebuilt this team and they made it one of the biggest offensive threats, added some amazing defensive players. They got Vic Fangio running that defense right now. I just don't know how they're not favored because I understand that these games were close. Last year, these teams played in week 3. It was super close. Miami messed up and they let the Bills get the win. It's a tough place to play, Buffalo. But the reason this is our game of the week is that 53.5. These teams, I think this is a high scoring game. I expect Waddle to be back, and I expect, Buffalo to really give Miami not an opportunity to run all over them the way Denver did last week. I don't think that Buffalo is the same team as Denver. We're talking about a whole new landscape of familiarity with these coaches, with these teams. I love that Dalton Kincaid, got involved last week a little bit for the Bills. I want to see the Bills defense step up the way they did last week with Sam Howell. Not get 4 interceptions. That's very hard to do back to back. But I mean, keep Tua in check, man. I mean, he's second right now in passing yards, second in passing touchdowns. Tyreek Hill is having a season. You got to find a way to stop that. But I'm going with
Yeah,
Miami no matter what. I just want to say that.
I'm also going to go with Miami. Um, I think for me right now, it's just the way this offense is playing is just absolutely insane. It's just all speed to us really understanding the game so well. Just put up insane numbers the last 3 weeks, especially last week. Then we saw the running game absolutely go off between Mostert and H, and it was like 6 touchdowns between them or something like that.
Yeah,
It was
eight,
just
eight.
8. It was
They each had 4, Sean. It's unfathomable.
It was just fantastic to watch. And look, the Bills are a really good team. Josh Allen has an 8-2 record against them. So there's it makes sense. They're also at home. There's a lot of reasons that they'd be favored in this one, I think.
sure.
And I think this is going to be a great game. I think that spread of 3 is really great. I think that's like a comfortable spread to be at. I don't see a team winning by more than 7 points. You know what I mean?
I agree.
I think it's going to be a nail biter. I think we're going right down to the end, right down to the wire. And I think really what it's going to come down to is just which defense makes that stop, that interception, that turnover. Last week, Buffalo dominated on defense with 4 interceptions. It might not be the same this week, but if that pass rush that they have can get after them, after Tua, it might change the pace of this game a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting. But in the way Miami's playing, when you have Mike White throwing a bomb to Chosen Anderson,
I can't bet against a team that just scored 70. I love the Bills too, but I don't think either of us in good conscience can look at this Miami team right now and be like, they just scored 70 points. We should put money down for them to lose. It's a tough world, but you gotta see these divisional teams. You know, this is where those upsets happen. These are the sweet spots that you're looking for in the season.
This is a huge first test for Miami also, I think, with one of their like major challenges outside of the Patriots early on.
Agreed. Yeah, they're playing a top 5 AFC team, whether they're division opponents or not, you know?
Yeah, and if they win this one, it sets them up to be that number 1 potentially, you know, into the season until the round 2 when they get to play each other. So
are they your favorite right now in the AFC? Do you think anybody in the AFC can beat them?
I think Chiefs right now, I would still lean are my favorite, just because Mahomes has been there, done that last few years. You know what I mean? That entire franchise and organization has. I think in the AFC, you know, I think you got to start to look at Miami potentially as that too. That's getting right above the Bills. You know, it's always kind of been, you know, we were saying it was Kansas City and Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati could take them out of the conversation for right now. And it's Kansas City, Buffalo. But Miami, I mean, you put up 70 points, you neglect to break the historic record of 72 points.
They had 8 minutes left when they had
they could have broken it multiple times. They chose not to. And that speaks to the character of Mike McDaniels. And if you want, go watch his post-game speech. It was fantastic when he was talking to them in the locker room. Basically just saying, this is 1 week. This is not the defining moment of the season. The defining moment of the season is the goal, which is to win the Super Bowl. You know, and he's absolutely right. You just because you scored 70 points 1 week doesn't mean you're now going to win every other game just because you've done it. So you still got to show up. And this is a huge test for them also in that regard, where it's like, you know, such a dominating game. Then you come back. And do you get dominated, or do you just completely fumble the bag? What's going to happen now?
If they lose this game, we're going to be talking about them in a whole next week. But that's how
Exactly, and that's football. Any given Sunday, baby. And that's all the time they have. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you guys for checking us out. Always check out our Instagram, Just Saying with no G, WJS. For all of our updates, our game picks, and our video promos posted and announcements to see when we're posting. Always subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. Get us in your ears. Just Saying Football. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the game.
Enjoy.